Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We'll give it about a couple more seconds till we get started. In the meantime, um, find something comfortable to sit on. Hopefully, your screens are nice and bright. You guys are having a great day. We'll hand it off to our speakers shortly. And for those of you just joining in, we're seeing a lot of folks trickling in now. Thank you for joining us. We'll get started in about 1 minute. And as we wait, I just want to introduce myself. I'm AJ. I'm dialing in from the Bay Area in California. Michelle, I think you're dialing in from the East Coast. That's right, Michelle?
Best Coast, East Coast.
Oh, okay. There we go. And then Raquel and Vicente, I think they're dialing in from Barcelona. So,
Hi.
you know, it's a little late in their day, but thank you guys for joining us and helping with this webinar. We do see a lot of folks coming in now, so we will just get started now. I'd like to just welcome you to today's webinar. We love to keep this as interactive as possible. So if you have any questions for us, please submit them using the Submit a Question tab, and we'll answer them live today. There's also a chat. I think Michelle just typed in that chat as well. If you'd like to just interact with us, if you have comments or any feedback from anything we're presenting or what you'd like to hear at future events, leave us feedback using the chat. Without further ado, I'll hand this off to you, Michelle.
Hi, everyone, and welcome. Good morning, good evening, and a happy day all around. It's an exciting day, and I'm so glad that you were able to join us because we know how hard it is to navigate complexity. And I have two premier leads that are going to be able to tell us how we can actually keep our Spring application secure and up to date without disrupting. And first, I have from Barcelona, and actually, her and Vincent are both at Spring IO this week in Barcelona, and they're going to be talking on the stage about this very same topic. And it's our Spring Application Advisor, but don't let the name fool you. It's actually an application advisor that can actually look at all of your applications, Java, Spring, and we're expanding. So Raquel, our technology product lead, do you want to take it over from here?
Sure. Thank you, Michelle, for this introduction. All right. Welcome, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here and talk to you a little bit more about how we envision that Spring upgrade should happen. Just a small disclaimer. And let me introduce myself a little bit. So I'm Raquel. As Michelle said, I'm a product manager working in Spring Application Advisor, basically. My expertise area is developer tools that are helping to understand how to upgrade and make those automatic changes in the source code directly. And as well, I have some background in CI/CD tooling. This is my email address in case that you want to send me any questions after the webinar if you need to. And then we have Vicente. Vicente, do you want to give some words here?
Yeah, sure, I can introduce myself. So yeah, thank you everybody for attending this webinar. My name is Vicente. I live in the east coast of Spain as well, in Valencia. It's around 300 kilometers south to where we are right now. We are live currently in Spring IO Barcelona. Basically, Raquel and I are together in the same room doing this. And yeah, I'm one of the software engineers working on the team, actively working on more capabilities for advisor, fixing every bug. And one of the special things that I think it's important to transmit this is that we are attending any kind of feedback that our customers give, because yeah, we want to have the best product that there is and help all our customers with their upgrades of applications. Yeah, that's it. You can take it over.
Thank you. All right. Well, let's start with the problem, right? As you know, all enterprises are exposing services in a global basis, right? So it means that all these services are exposed to vulnerabilities at the same time and security risk. And besides, this is a benefit because enterprises have access to all the market. At the same time, means that you are exposed to even more risks than before, right? And here is the thing. organizations have applied successfully during the last years this moving security to the left, so shift left. And but the problem is that the real bottleneck part is not about understanding the CVEs that an application contains. It's about remediation, the remediation of those CVEs, because this is where most of the time is spent. And at the end, this is blocking the delivery of important initiatives or important features that are strongly connected with the business. So it's not that it's only about complexity, it's as well a moment where organizations are disrupted from time to time when an upgrade happens, and this upgrade might need the coordination of multiple teams. And here we have the first poll to all of you.
Yeah, so take your time. You could go ahead, please vote. We have this also online on our Spring users and LinkedIn to see what's the biggest headache? What's the hardest part about managing your Spring upgrades and your projects? I'd love to sit here and say that it's the easiest thing you can do. We know we've heard from all of you that it is complex, and we'll talk a little bit about that. So I just want to know, if you had to pick the one hardest part, what would it be? And I see that we have some votes. We're going to give it a minute. And what's so great about this poll is not only are you engaging and getting to see that you're not alone in what you think is the biggest complexity, but what we do from a Broadcom VMware Tanzu side is we'll take that information and see how we can remove those stumbling blocks or those roadblocks to make your lives a little bit easier. AJ, do we want to give it another minute? Let me see, 64%.
I think
Oh,
this is
Pavel,
good.
you have
I
a
can end
question?
and
Does Pavel have a question? He had his hand raised.
poll just ended here. Michelle, are you able to see the results on your end?
I am. Is anyone surprised that keeping upgrades continuous and on track is 47%? So it's over double of what the other ones are. We know, again, it's always hard knowing what to upgrade, how to handle those custom upgrade paths. And some people really aren't sure. And when I did the poll globally online, I'm seeing more than 6% not even sure where to start. So why don't we close this poll and get it back over to Raquel, and she can tell us if we can solve this headache.
Thank you, Michelle. Well, there is an important fact, which is that after doing the annual survey from the Spring community, something that we have learned is that in the last year, 65% of the developers were manually upgrading Spring, right? And for sure, there are going to be good reasons for that. But it, at the end, means that there is some complexity. But some of them as well are doing different approaches. And it's because probably they are using the latest and greatest versions. And then they can use tools like Renovate or Dependabot or Sneak that are producing automatic pull requests, right? That are simply modifying the version number of the Spring dependencies. As you can see in this picture, this is a real example taken from a project in GitHub, where they have bumped the version of Spring Boot from 3.3 to 3.4. By the way, now we are going to publish 3.5, no? But this is a minor version. And usually, the changes associated to minor version requires as well that you apply some API changes, not because they have disappeared, but because those APIs have been deprecated, right? And if you don't want to use those warnings and you don't want to accumulate all this debt to a major upgrade, it's time to apply those changes. right? And these tools cannot make those changes, and therefore the only way to do that is by manually checking this new branch that has been created for you and apply the corresponding substitutions.
Hey Raquel, real quick, we have a audience question. You mentioned Spring Boot 3.5. Can they upgrade to Spring Boot 3.5.x already with App Advisor?
So Spring Boot 3.5 is going to be published today. So only after it's published to Maven Center is when App Advisor is going to be released. So in the next release of App Advisor, which is going to be in the next days, you are going to be able to upgrade to the latest and latest version of Spring Boot, which is 3.5.
Great question. Fantastic timing. Okay, back to you.
Thank you. And well, there are other tools that are making a real impact, no, in the process of upgrading Java APIs. One of these tools is Open Rewrite, which is an open source tooling that basically offers a means to run through Maven or Gradle plugins recipes, which at the end are programs that are containing a way or a definition of what changes need to be applied, right? Um, OpenRewrite offers a catalog of recipes, and some of those recipes are for upgrading Spring, right? And at the end, the experience is far better, I would say better or much better than just using those services that are updating your dependencies. But at the end, it requires that somebody runs the tool when the time when the time happens, right? And yeah, this tool is super powerful, right? But at the same time, when you are applying an upgrade for a particular version of Spring, it's as well applying all the best practices associated to previous upgrades, which means that usually you are going to see lots of changes in your repo that might be strictly related or not to the upgrade that you want to apply, which makes difficult to understand when something is broken, what's the reason. And then is when everybody starts to think about splitting those changes in smaller pieces, right? Another important aspect of using purely Open Rewrite is that Open Rewrite knows or performs exactly what the recipe defines, nothing else, nothing more, and therefore has no visibility, right? If you should wait and see if other teams need to upgrade Spring in any of the dependencies that you are using. So in other words, if your application are using, I don't know, internal frameworks, internal libraries that are using Spring, which is a quite common use case, and you blindly execute Open Rewrite, at the end you are going to see a wrong result because you need to apply those upgrades in a particular order, right? And as well release in the same order. And this is the real problem. The upgrading framework such as Spring, right, might impact multiple projects, right, and not only your internal projects. It's as well a framework that has been used as well for other relatively important open source projects, right? And guess what? Spring is as well relying in other open source components, which at the same time are upgraded when Spring is upgraded. And therefore, the upgrade is simply becoming more and more complex to manage.
Hey Raquel, real quick, before we start the poll, we have two questions. One is from Sundar. You mentioned about API changes, not only changing the parent Spring Boot version. Now we have open rewrite kind of recipes present. Can we get in touch with the Merdine team and provide them each and every upgrade set of APIs so that it's easy for people to upgrade? And that's also in the chat if you needed to read it in the
Okay,
Q&A.
okay, let me see. You mentioned about API changes.
And we don't have
I
to
mean,
answer it live.
so,
Go ahead.
all right. Yeah, I can answer. So basically, the way that we that the recipes need to be applied or designed is it's an effort that requires to understand the changes that the Spring team has delivered in the release notes. So there is no intermediate thing that we can provide to the community, right? It's a manual effort that requires to check what the Spring team has implemented in the upgrade guides that is useful for everybody that performs those upgrades manually or automatically.
Okay. Does that help, Sadar? I'm thinking that it does. If not, you can always submit your question in the Q&A. We also have another one before the poll. It says, can I configure Application Advisor to upgrade other OSS projects and not just Spring projects?
Yeah, totally. At the end, Spring Application Advisor has been designed to upgrade any Java project, right? And that could be internal or other open source projects. However, the main difference that we are going to see in the next slides is that we have a higher recipe coverage for Spring, right? And therefore, because App Advisor relies on top of Open Rewrite, we provide, as part of App Advisor enterprise recipes, right? Those recipes are increasing the coverage, and you have better results, right, than using any other tools. It's part of the product.
Awesome. You gave a much better answer. I was just going to answer yes. So thank you, Raquel. So, hey, here's our poll. How do you currently manage Spring upgrades? I'm curious, and these are for the major releases. And as you know, or maybe you're not aware, but Spring Framework 7 and Spring Boot 4 will release later this year in November. But so think of your major releases and how do you upgrade them? We gave you 4 options. Don't be shy. Let's go ahead and vote. I see there's about 60 people on the webinar, a little bit over.
There is another question, I think, that is in the chat, which I want to take the time to answer it, which is that there is an issue reported in GitHub. Of course, I'm not going to check that at this moment, that says that it's breaking in production when they upgrade Spring Boot to 3.4, 3.2, and 3.4.3. This is something that it is the Spring team who should be able to answer. It's not an application advisor topic, in my opinion. But at the end, it should, of course, a patch version shouldn't break in production. So maybe there is something else that the Spring team can help with.
Okay, I'm going to jot that down. You know what, AJ, for this, about 70%, over 70% answered. Do we want to end that poll?
Just ended.
Oh, fantastico. So, are we surprised? Anyone on this call? Anyone surprised that how we upgrade, if we had to only pick one, that we manually plan for upgrade across multiple teams? Okay, Raquel, you want to see if we can
Yep,
solve any of those issues?
sure.
Thanks.
All right. So, well, continuing with the discussion, comparing with the solutions that are in the market and alternatives that people are starting to use, what we want to share as well is that, at least from our perspective, right, using pure AI models for upgrade purposes shouldn't be the best practice. Why? Because of the same reason, right? You might have internal components, and the upgrade process might require coordination between teams because those projects need to be upgraded and released in a particular order. And any model is going to know anything about your internal components, right? And just you can, of course, experiment with AI, and maybe there is some success ratio, but at the end, for minor or major upgrades, right? It could also provide hallucinations, which at the end is more work for you. So we believe that at the end, AI should be enriched with additional help of a tool, right? And in this case, this tool is Spring Application Advisor. And what is this? What is Application Advisor? So basically, it's a CLI tool, a native CLI tool that is giving to you an upgrade plan, and every step is something that you can actually upgrade in isolation and integrate in your source code, right? And as I was mentioning, Spring Application Advisor is simply better for Spring because all these changes are executing open rewrite recipes, but not the all open source one, but instead the enterprise recipes that are part of the product. And there's an important detail about the Spring Application Advisor, which is that Spring Application Advisor is understanding if any application depends on an internal component, and therefore, in that case, it's gonna pause the upgrade until this component is upgraded and released, and this definition of the versions that are available are shared with Spring Application Advisor. Then when the new version is available and App Advisor understands that this project has been upgraded with a new version of Spring, the upgrade process of the application is gonna continue. Vicente is gonna explain several use cases that has certain complexity, but as well, something that I would like to share is that Application Advisor is understanding at the end the dependency graph of the components that needs to be upgraded. And it might be the case that, for instance, there are interrelationship between dependencies, and some of them cannot be simply upgraded to the next version available. There might be hops, and those hops are introduced because this dependency has been consumed as a transitive one. Something that I want that you remember about what is Application Advisor, which I think that is a good analogy, is that if you have already used at some moment commands to upgrade your Linux or Debian laptop or any machine, the process is basically, hey, let's look and see what are the latest versions available. And is there any possible way to upgrade the tools that I have already installed, right? These are the apt-get update and apt-get upgrade commands. And sometimes there is no combination available, right? So the equivalent commands for upgrading Spring in this case is advisor upgrade plan get and advisor upgrade plan apply. And of course, there are situations where people want to force to install a particular package, right? And simply experiment if something is broken when they play with the new package, right? In those cases, there is as well an option which is dpkg-a-force, and this is equivalent, as I was explaining, to simply apply a recipe directly because it's ignoring what is inside and it's simply executing a set of steps to read your source code. And now I want to show you a Spring Application Advisor in action with a Spring Pet Clinic, right? But I want you to see what are the commands, how you can play with them. Now I'm going to share my terminal. I have here a version of Spring Pet Clinic that is using Java 11 and Boot 2.7. Indeed, if I open the POM.xml, you're going to see that my boot starter parent is 2.7, right? And if I scroll down, you are going to see as well, 1 second, properties, yeah, it's here. The Java version is 11, right? Now, if I run Advisor, I have a set of commands, and we are going to see all of them in this session. The first command that I should apply is the build config get. Why? Because build config is what gives information to advisor about the context. So what are your dependencies? What are your modules? What are your build tool versions, etc. This build config is stored
Wow,
in
this
a
is really
local.
fast.
Yeah.
This is really fast, Raquel.
This is the result, right? This is the build config.json, and this is just a local file in your build directory. This only needs Maven or Gradle under the hood, right? Which is the classic build tool that you are going to use to build your application. Now that we have this file already, advisor upgrade plan get, I can query what is the upgrade plan, and it's going to calculate the upgrade plan, which says, hey, you can upgrade now to Java 17 because guess what? Java 17 is a requirement of boot, and this step is something that you can apply because you can run Spring Boot 2.7 with Java 17. Right? So it's the minimum step that you can apply. Then you can continue, and in this case, it's going to upgrade from boot 2.7 to 3.0. And you see, the hibernate dependency is not simply bumped to 6.0, it's bumped to 6.1 because this is the change required for Spring Data JPA. So this is why, at the end, App Advisor is understanding the graph of dependencies and is managing or detecting what are the right versions to create all your packages together. And these are all the steps until the latest version that is available in Maven Central, that today is 3.4 still. Now, if I want to apply those changes, I can simply run the apply command. And it is going to apply the first step, always the first step, because at the end, the idea, as we are going to see, is that App Advisor has been designed to be executed in a continuous manner. So that after a pull request generated with the changes produced by upgrade plan apply is merged, then the flow continues. So you generate the build config with the updated information, and the next upgrade step is applied. Now, if we do git diff, we are going to see these changes, right? And then, following the process, I can do build config get, and apply again. I don't need to do upgrade plan get. It's simply for informational purpose. But if I do apply, then it's going to continue. And we can see all the changes associated to, in this case, Spring Boot 3.0. An important detail that we are going to explain with more detail in another slide is that Spring Application Advisor is providing upgrades with enterprise recipes for Spring Boot, Spring Framework, Spring Integration, and Spring Data since the upgrade of Spring Boot 2.7 to 3.0. But we are going to learn more in a few minutes. And here we are. Then we have, well, all the corresponding changes to Jakarta, and as well, Java APIs have been upgraded, as you can see, right? These changes, you can argue that some of the changes are already providing from the open source recipes, but there are others that are not, right? Or at least they are not part of the default strategy. Why? Because one of the ways that or the best practices that we follow to design the recipes is that we want that the application behave as before the applying the upgrade, and therefore we are undoing, let's say, changes on the best practices that Spring applies from one version to another. In this case, for instance, the slash that is here, right, is becoming necessary to express, because before, in the previous version of Spring, this expression was matching with any request of this form or this form. Now you need to be explicit to increase the performance. And you can see as well other practices that best practices that are part of this upgrade. Let me show you others. Here. This is for the same reason. We are restoring the date format to the previous format because we don't know if the application logs are going to be read for any other client, right? That is not using Spring, so won't notice unless the application starts. Right? The same for the management endpoints. And finally, this kind of expressions as well is something that were introduced in Spring Boot 3.0, right? So instead of having this long sentence of deserialize and serialize, you can simply use clone. All right, then I can come back to the deck. So as I said, at the end, Spring Application Advisor has been designed to be executed in a continuous manner from your CI/CD pipelines. And currently, we support Jenkins, GitHub Actions, and GitLab. However, if you have a different CI/CD system, you can as well configure it because it's a matter of executing these commands. And the main difference is that in case that, for instance, you're using Bitbucket, right, to store your repo, then you are going to need to add additional commands to explicitly create the pull request with the changes. If you're using GitLab and GitHub, the upgrade can apply if it's properly configured with the access token, and the --push option is going to create that pull request for you. Cool. So what are the main challenges that we have today for App Advisor? Well, we need to discover what is the upgrade plan, right? Which at the end relies on a complex algorithm because App Advisor needs to work not only for Spring Boot, because as you know, there is an SBOM that is helping to understand what are the dependencies that the correct dependency versions that you need to upgrade to, but as well for Spring Framework projects, right? And this is allowing us at the same time understand when it's time to upgrade a particular build tool, which could be Java, could be Maven wrapper, or could be Gradle wrapper as well, right? And then the second aspect is that, of course, we know that upgrades needs to be orchestrated or coordinated among teams, and we want to automate that process because at the end, if App Advisor is executed in a continuous manner and upgrades are only happening when the downstream dependencies have been already upgraded and communicated the new versions to App Advisor, then you should be able to as well provide your own recipes for your own internal components. And finally, we want that App Advisor is not only focused on the upgrade capability, but as well a means to let you communicate what are the best practices to deploy your Spring applications. And here there is another opportunity for get your feedback.
Hey, Michelle, I can't hear you.
Oh, you can?
We try now.
Can you hear me now?
There we go. Hear you
Oh,
now.
fantastico. So if you had a spring companion or a buddy or a sidekick, or what would you want it to handle? Like you rule the world. You have these four things. And then I also want to as you guys answer that, Raquel, we have about 8 questions.
Yeah, I am answering.
Okay, fantastic. And then AJ, we'll be able to get a list of it out for everyone, correct?
Correct, Jess. We will be able to.
Okay, so fear not. Okay. Why don't we give it just a few more seconds? There's a lot of good information that we're sharing today, and I want to make sure that we can answer everyone's question, but I know that your time is valuable, so I don't want to extend this more than what we have to.
I just ended the poll there, Michelle. Can see the results there now.
Okay. Oh, see, if you want the world like me, you want all of it. You want to spot what needs upgraded. You want to help build secure apps with less hassle because who wants hassle? And you really need help reviewing code with the Spring best practices. That was the second largest. So let's close this out. And am I gonna? I think I'm going to Vincent or Raquel. Take us
Um,
to the next slide, please.
yeah, this is gonna be for Vicente.
Yes, thank you very much. So yeah, basically with what Raquel already explained, I'm going to just go through the first two challenges because I think it's more describes more of the technical part of what Advisor tries to achieve. And yeah, I think we can get more envision of this part. So as you saw in the example that in the demo that Raquel already executed, we got something like what we have in the right of, part of the screen, right? We have a series of steps, which is basically what we describe as the upgrade plan. And there might be some questions around this that you might be asking now, which, for instance, what projects need to be upgraded in every step? How is Advisor getting all of them? And okay, I know what projects I need to upgrade, what recipes need to be applied for any or every of those projects. We decided inside Advisor to model all the dependencies in terms of projects, not artifacts, and every version of those projects, right? As you see in the center of the screen, there is a list of just coordinates that we can match with the, what we call the project Spring Data Commons, and a list of versions that will give us information, direct information or meta information, like for instance, which recipes we need to apply from 2.2 to go to the next version. Which is the next version? Well, as you can see down below, it tells us that you will be migrating to 2.3 and all the relevant information that we need to do this matching. We also have a parameter there, it's called supported generations, that basically links every other project and their versions, particularly to this version of this project. Every project at least has one recipe related to the upgrade that we need to apply. It might be including some changes, and I saw a question in the list of questions about that. It might be changes related to code that is deprecated, that needs to be updated, that removes a parameter, that changes the type. All those things are written into the recipe, and then the recipe is put there as part of the information of the upgrade that we need to do. And then it basically goes to the next version. If that recipe is non-existent because there are no updates that are needed, bumping the version on its own, and so it's also a recipe that we can apply, and Advisor does it. Obviously, I mean, it's not needed to say this, but it is mandatory to resolve the project of every dependency included in your applications. Now, with this slide, what we are seeing is that there is an upgrade in step 3 in which we are bumping both versions of Spring Boot and Java CFM with a series of steps. Basically, for Java CFM, we are skipping 3.0, and for Spring Boot, we are skipping also 3.0. This is something that Advisor, in its inner calculation, in order to match all the projects and all the versions, does with the information that I showed previously. The reason obviously is not stated here. I think it's important to say this, and you can also do this analysis if you know your application. In this case, it's the reason might be Spring Cloud services starters. As you can see, it's the third one in this third step. It's only bumping one version, and as dependencies, it also uses Java CFM and Spring Boot. And it's need those versions align directly from the version 3.5 to 4.0 against those other versions of these two projects. That might be the reason why you see these kind of jumps, which indeed it's not that we are skipping upgrades, it's that we are aligning those versions for your application to be able to be compiled and run, right, without any more issues. If we can go to the next slide. Thank you. So yeah, in this case, there is also an assumption that we are doing among all the Spring teams, and I think it's a good assumption to do because every Spring team is working under these constraints. We use semantic versioning in all the Spring teams, and basically what it means is that Spring Retry, which its latest version is 2.0, and there are no more releases expected of this project, can allow us, and by the way, sorry, this 2.0 aligns with the Spring Framework 6.0. Ideally, you would think that it cannot allow us to keep upgrading our application to following versions of Spring Framework because it aligns to 6.0 and there are no more versions of Spring Retry. Well, that's not the case because, as I said, many projects of this Spring ecosystem use semantic versioning. And the good thing about this is that whatever works with this major version, in this case Spring Framework 6.0, is going to most definitely work with 6.1 and 6.2. And that's why you see in the next steps upgrades for those projects. Let's continue. Thank you. Yeah, this is mostly also what Raquel already explained. Spring, we don't focus 100% on Spring, and actually we don't do that. We started with Spring projects, of course, but what we do is treat every project that you are linking on your application in the form of dependencies included in or imported in your application as first-class citizens. We don't exclude any kind of upgrades, and if a project is part of an open source community and it's aligned in any form with a Spring, even though if it's not a Spring project, we need to include it, we need to provide upgrades, and this is basically the final result of what we are providing. There is a caveat about this, is that some other projects might not be using semantic versioning, and hence if we detect that, we cannot keep providing those upgrades that I described before. But this is just a caveat of every project that is not a Spring project. Otherwise, we can still perform. Continue. Thank you. So yeah, and here comes basically the second challenge, right? Which is, okay, I have done this calculation, I have applied this this list of getting the upgrades that I need. I have my build config, all the information from the SBOM, and so what do I need to do next in order to support this upgrading culture in a continuously manner? So let's see this aforementioned slides. So in this case, for instance, and in the example, what explains is that we have an application that, as it usually happens, uses, in the form of also imports, other projects from the same organization or same company or different teams, same team, but a different artifact. Whatever might be the situation, advisor is now in the position of not knowing exactly what to do in order to upgrade Acme Bookings app, because it detects that there is a component called Acme Spring Started, which in turn uses Spring Boot. It knows how to upgrade Spring Boot to whatever version Acme Bookings app might be using, but since there is something in between, it's impossible for advisor without any more information to provide the upgrade plan. Hence, it says no upgrade plans available. Even though you might think, okay, just bumping the version, yes, but we might leave if we do bump the versions of whatever APIs Acme Bookings app is using for Spring Boot, we might be introducing breaking changes because Acme Spring Started might use those APIs with a different version of a Spring Boot, and it can break the application. Next one. Okay. So yeah, what do we do in order to solve the situation? Well, and as we put in the poll before, what would you like advisor to solve for you? And I was very happy to see that almost everybody is saying all the above, because there are many things that advisor can do for you. In this case, we ship advisor with a subcommand. In this case, is the one that you see in the screen, mapping get, which basically can point to a particular repo in which you have this collection of artifacts that you are using in another application within your organization. And it basically detects which versions have you published about it. It scans all the dependencies, and it builds a file very similar to what we saw previously, all those versions listed with the next version. It still misses information because it doesn't know exactly what to do with those if there are no more recipes provided. But that's also a good foundation for every team that is working on those to provide those recipes in the same file that was generated with this. With that information, advisor can provide also an upgrade plan, and you can see that it will be very much aligned to what we saw in the previous slides. Let's continue. So yeah, as I was saying, basically, once you apply that command and you get results from your application because it's accessible, there are versions published, etc., you will see a file that has been generated in the form of what you have on your left, on the left of your screen. The recipes field might be empty or will be empty if you haven't added anything. But if you have the actual recipes, the actual steps that you need to do in order to upgrade from 1.0 to the next version, which, as we listed before, is 1.1, you can include those recipes here. An advisor will basically take them from the artifacts that is published in your repository and apply them whenever you apply one of these steps from the upgrade plan. On the right side, we see basically another example of getting an upgrade plan, but this time it includes upgrades for your internal components. Let's continue. Okay. Yes, and well, just not to not divert of what we already explained already. Basically, it does the same thing, right? If for whatever reason your artifact just points to the latest version of Spring Boot, and that latest version is not aligned with what advisor has, like for instance, the latest version being here, Spring Boot 3.4, and your component hasn't been published with this upgraded version, advisor is only going to recommend you to upgrade up until the information it has, which is, yeah, as you can see, the first step, upgrading to Spring Starter 1.2 to 2.0, okay, what we see on the right of the screen. And immediately after that is going to tell you there are certain upgrades that you can still apply. You would be able to still apply because there are more versions in the market for these projects. It's just that you need to provide these kind of upgrades, these kind of versions for this particular component that we didn't find in the provided files. Now, with this information, with all what we've said during the first challenge and the presentation for this second challenge, a company that is already using Advisor and leverages everything about the recipes written to upgrade those versions of internal components, knowing which Spring and non-Spring projects are using, they can do integrations on their own pipelines. So you will see that you have the creation, your pipeline could be creating this mapping build configs or the JSONs that we saw previously with all the information. We could provide that file via using an environment variable, as in the second example. We can see Spring Advisor mapping custom 0 git URI. This is basically a file that is pointing to a Git repository. We have, you can read the documentation, we provide several use cases for the absorption of the ingestion of this file into Advisor. There's Git repositories, there's Artifactories. You can even basically provide the file raw alongside the code itself. And yeah, basically after that, you just can run again, upgrade a plan, get and upgrade plan apply, and your results will be there just in a minute. And I think I hand it over again back to Raquel. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Vicente. All right. Well, we want as well that the Spring Application Advisor is not only to support any project, but we want that Spring Application Advisor is even much better for Spring, right? So why this is much better for Spring? Well, if we take into account all the Spring projects, which are more than 100 projects, and as well third-party open source projects that are connected with Spring, because they use Spring or because they have been used by Spring, right? This is about, in total, 150 projects, right? Spring Application Advisor is able to cover almost, well, more than 80% of those, right? We are going to see why. And just to share it here is because we are not only relying on explicit recipes that are provided by Broadcom as an enterprise recipes for operating Spring, but the Spring Application Advisor is as well generating recipes at runtime. Why? Because in many occasions, there are going to be components that are providing versions without applying any API changes, and they are simply producing a new version because their dependencies have changed. And this is going to be, we have seen that this is a very common use case in the open source community and as well in organizations. So we want to be able to at least, right, be able to upgrade the version number, and then if a recipe comes later, just add it into the upgrade mappings that Vicente have shared, right? So this means that you can upgrade the Spring Framework, Spring Boot projects. You can also include your internal dependencies. So the upgrade plan not only to upgrading boot or framework is as well including your internal dependencies inside. And then if you decide to provide a recipe later, then you can. And this is as well a way to simplify the recipe development. Why? Because as well, Application Advisor, what is doing is resolving all the recipes that needs to be executed based on your dependencies. Remember that, right? So that your own recipes don't need to know what recipes needs to be executed to upgrade the dependencies that your project is using, because this is resolved at runtime. So this is helping you to move forward without providing a recipe, and as well simplifying the recipe development. Now, where we are in terms of recipes? Well, we have already published recipes for the main components of the Spring Boot. You know that there are hundreds, but the most used ones are Spring Boot, Framework, Security, Data, and Integration. And well, today we are releasing Spring Boot 3.5. And here the thing, Spring Framework 6.2 is the same, right? And we are going to publish the Spring Boot 3.5 recipe after it is available on Maven Central. But the recipe is complete. The next step is to continue and publish the recipes for security, data, and integration. And guess what? We have already started to produce recipes for Spring Boot 4. And one of them is Spring Boot is Spring Framework 7. And indeed, that recipe has been already published in the last months. And this is something that you can play with if you want to, right? In case that you have access to the Spring Enterprise Maven repo, you can play with the recipe, share your feedback if you want to, but at the end, this is an upcoming recipe because there is going to be more contributions coming to Spring Framework 7 and as well as Spring Boot 4. But this is something that we have already started, so that when this project is available, you can simply follow and continue with the upgrade. And here another poll.
Oh, okay. You could take a breather, Raquel. That was a lot. I like it. But here's my favorite question, because this stat always blows me away. Yep, the poll. The Spring Application Advisor that we're rebranding as Application Advisor, because as you've heard earlier, we do so much more than just Spring apps. But what would you say as a developer or your development team, how much time can they save?
I think, sorry, well, while people are answering the poll, Michelle, there are a couple of questions about if the slides are going to be available for the attendance of the webinar, and
Great
also
news,
the
they will
recording.
be. And the recording will be. AJ, once we wrap up, I know that we have maybe 6 minutes left of your precious time. We will be sending out those resources, that deck. It will be available to play on demand, so you can share with your friends and your leadership team, and you can watch it whenever you like and fast forward when you need to. And we'll also be sending a follow-up email, so you'll have that all. In your chat, I've put some really good resources if you wanted to look between now and then as well. AJ,
Okay, that
since
was it.
we're
Thank you.
AJ, since we only have about 5 more minutes, and I think we're good, but I don't want to leave anything out, I think it's good to say that 44% of you believe that we could save 80% of the time, and that is a great goal. But Raquel, you want to go over how we can show them the return on investment with your application advisor?
Sure. So we have estimated that at the end, developers can save between 40 and 50% of the time, especially in, as we were presenting, right, all the time, in those projects that have the higher complexity, because otherwise we need to orchestrate and coordinate multiple teams. If advisory is executed in a continuous manner, it's simply unlocking the door in the same way that you are using tools for bumping your dependencies, but is as well including the necessary changes for the Java API changes. We have split this problem into different complexity levels. So S would be, hey, I have a very basic application that is using Spring APIs directly, right? And manually, it's going to take approximately 1 week. These are the estimates that were coming by not only the upgrade, but as well the review process, testing, and so on. And using AppAdvisor at the end, you can simply do the execution, and only you have, I would say, you only need 1 or 2 days to review the code changes and deploy again the application, right? Then what else could happen? It could happen, right, that in that upgrade, there are some migrations that are required. We saw that in the past. There are some Spring projects and as well other open source projects that are not producing versions for the new, or are not part of the releasing of Spring Boot, or they are not providing more versions when a new Spring Boot version is available. In those cases, those migrations usually require a manual effort because they are opinionated. You need to decide what is the target technology that you need to move the existing APIs. And in this case, that effort could be manual, right? What we think is that at the end, you can shortcut this if you configure AppAdvisor with the corresponding recipes to do those migrations, right? So it's a matter of doing the upgrade plus the execution of those custom recipes. And finally, we have the highest complexity because it requires to touch multiple repositories. And in those cases, probably it's going to take a month approximately if you need to, again, decide who does what, when those versions are going to be available, when the other team can start working on that. And I'm here a little bit optimistic, right? We believe that if you can simply stop doing all this manual process because everything is automated, you can save half of the time. And then in this case would be approximately 2 weeks. And just to close, I'm going to be a little bit fast here, which is the last part, because it's about offering best practices. So we want that Spring Application Advisor is as well your Spring Buddy or Spring Companion. So you know what is available as well already in the enterprise Maven repo that you can use, and it's going to help you to implement the best practices in your application related to security, or don't reinvent the wheel, right? In this case, Application Advisor is providing a new command, which is advice list and advice apply. So those advices are new projects that are available that you can start using it because you're using AppAdvisor, right? And in case that you want to implement best practices, in this case related to API management or about compliance, you can simply say, this project is available, I want to apply it, and then you can see that you have an example included into your application following these best practices. The idea is that those advices are going to evolve and are going to as well provide other potential best practices, such as upgrade to the latest version of Java, right? Or include Spring Boot actuators. But this is just the beginning. And just to call out an important aspect here is that one of those recommendations is going to be to deploy in the Tanzu platform. So you will be able to generate the crowdfunding manifest files to deploy your Spring applications as well, without any effort of looking into the docs and understanding what means every single property that you need to configure, because all this information, or most of it, is already part of the build config. So we are able to generate those crowdfunding manifests. And here is something cool. Those recommendations is not something that you usually ask in the CLI. This is not something quite common. No, you expect to have an IDE experience. So the way that we have provided that IDE experience is not through a new ADI plugin, is through an MCP server. So Spring Application Advisor can be integrated as an MCP server, and then whenever you have a question related to those best practices, it's going to help you recommending all these projects, and you can actually apply them. Those best practices could include those external components, and as well help to do the upgrade, because all those commands are exposed through the MCP server. And just to close, one of the subcommands of build config is publish. Why? Because Application Advisor can be configured to send data to the Tanzu Platform UI or Tanzu Hub, and then you can see the support status of your Spring dependencies and the associated vulnerabilities, so that you can do informed decisions about the criticality of the upgrade. And as a summary, and to close the session, the main problem that we are solving, right, is that upgrades are a complex problem, especially when it needs to be applied across multiple teams, or there are interdependencies between technical teams. This is a huge manual effort, and as well requires some coordination. The solution that we are providing is a Spring Application Advisor, which is reducing the cost of applying upgrades in Spring applications, is discovering what is the next step that you should upgrade to. So you are reducing the risk of upgrading Spring, and you can incrementally do that in your own speed, and is including the best practices to deploy your Spring applications. It can be easily integrated in your CI/CD workflow, because the idea is that you do that. The upgrade process is a continuous thing, right? You never stop doing that for security reasons. And finally, teams are using Application Advisor to scan and continuously upgrade your Spring apps, and obtain automatic pull requests in GitHub or GitLab when a new version is available that they can upgrade to, and as well for internal projects, right? I think that is all, and I don't want to extend more.
Right.
So,
Most of them. There was a couple outstanding questions. Is there a plan to open source App Advisor, because Open Rewrite recently changed some policies?
no, Application Advisor is a it's a CLI that is part of the Spring commercial offering. You could use a trial version of an Application Advisor soonish, as part of the Tanzu CF CLI plugin, as a Tanzu CF CLI plugin. And but those capabilities that you can use as a trial are only to understand or investigate what is the result of the upgrade plan, because at the end the recipe is required to be connected to the enterprise Maven repo.
All right. Well, excellent. I think we answered all those questions. There were about a dozen questions, and over 60 people here with us today. So thank you so much for your time. AJ, do you want to close us out? And I appreciate Raquel and Vicente, and enjoy Barcelona and Spring IO. I can't wait to watch it on demand.
Thank you, Michelle.
Yes, just want to say thank you to everyone here, Raquel, Michelle, Vicente, and everyone who joined us for today's webinar. Those who are watching in the future, well, it's on demand. Hello, thank you for joining us. This has been recorded, will be available on demand shortly after this presentation. There'll be a post-event email with the recording, and there may be some outstanding questions that we can answer via email as well. So thank you all. Have a great week. We'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.